Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Welcome.
You okay?
So we're live, another Monday. We had a little break last week with it being bank holiday, so I hope you've all had a lovely sunny week. Today, I've got an extra special guest. So now I'm quite excited. So I'm going to introduce Chris in a minute. But just to tell you today, we're just going to be talking, Chris is here, he's going to be talking about marketing. He's a bit of a marketing guru. So he's going to be talking about marketing and how social media needs to form part of not just your wider marketing strategy, but your wider business objectives. I think that's really important. So he's going to be giving us some really good tips today about how you can integrate the two and make it a bit more formal. And then this week I've got a Pinterest workshop coming up. So for anyone who's interested, who sells online, it's a phenomenal platform. A lot of people don't really know what Pinterest does, but if you do, it's one of my favorite social media platforms. So I'll be telling you a little bit about that at the end as well, as to why it's the best social media platform to generate leads to your website. But in the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to say hello. As usual, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss a Monday live stream as well. And again, if you've got any questions as we're going along, please do ask us. And hi Jill, Jill's joined us, and Esther. Hi Esther, thanks for saying hello. Anyone else who's watching, please do give us a shout out. If you are in my Facebook group, you will need to click on StreamYard. I'll put the link in the comments to join StreamYard so we know your name. Or just say, hi, it's Bex or Jill or whatever. So we know who it is. Okay, so that's it. We've gone a little, we're actually ahead of schedule today, which is unlike me. So now we are dead on 12:30. So yeah, I'd just like to hand you over to Chris from One Objective. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about who he is, what he does, and what we should all be doing.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for having me on. This is a first for me. It's all very exciting.
Yeah.
So, hi, as Beck said, my name's Chris Perkins. My business is called One Objective. It's still relatively new. I started in September last year, and my business is built around me because I'm the only person here, being a part-time marketing director or an outsourced marketing director. And this is something that I have built on over the past couple of years while I was working previously. It's an idea I had, and I'm just putting it into operation now, as it were. So let me give you a bit of background. So I've been working in, I call them proper jobs now. I've been working proper jobs for 25 years, always in marketing. I started in Warrington for Greenhalls. Then I went down to Bristol and worked for Summerfield and QuickSave. Working in concept development for those. Then I worked for Air Tours in the travel industry, and I managed all the Air Tours Going Places stores for a few years. And then I got itchy feet and I went around the world for a year, and I ended up in Australia. And in Australia, I was head of marketing for Fitness First, which is a big fitness chain over there in Australia. And then I went to a luxury cruise operator, Orion Cruises, and I was their sales and marketing director for about 5 years in the end, which was a fabulous job. It was a small luxury ship, and it used to go to the Kimberley and Papua New Guinea and Antarctica and all these amazing places. So I did that. Then I decided to come back to the UK, and for the past 6.5 years, I've been working for Wedgwood down in Stoke-on-Trent. So I was their marketing director for EMEA. And then I was their group business development director, and I looked after their global licensing portfolio. And then for the past couple of years, I've been managing their tourism destination business. They have a big brand experience, they call it, which is amazing, a museum and all sorts of Wedgwood experiences. So I've been managing that as well. But throughout the last 2 or 3 years, as I said, I've been working out how I could run my own business. And my own business is built around, as I said before, it's me. And it's using all these different pieces of experience that I've built up over the past 20 years, always working for either corporate businesses or for private equity-backed businesses. And my goal, if you like, is to help smaller businesses with their business planning. So when Bex, before and she introduced me as marketing, I think as soon as people say marketing, they automatically think of advertising. They automatically think of digital marketing, and increasingly, they automatically think of social media marketing. And to be fair, that's where all the execution's happening now, in digital marketing and in social media. But my specialism is taking a step back from that, and it's looking at business planning. It's looking at what's your brand like, how strong is your brand, because there are certain things that you need to build, like a really robust 2-year, 3-year business plan. You need to think about what your brand is saying, what your brand's doing. And once you've worked that out, then you can go and start thinking about digital marketing and the other types of marketing. But really, you need to make sure you've got this kind of rock in the center of all of your activity. And my concern, looking, and I'm moving into looking at small businesses, is a lot of them don't have that rock. They're doing all the content because I think for some people it's almost like they're expected to do this activity. And the key one really is social media. And I look so much at social media. I look at the stuff that Bex is doing. I look at the other social media that's out there. And I've used social media myself. For Wedgwood, for example, I developed the global social media strategy for Wedgwood and Waterford and the different brands I was working for. Did it for the cruise company before that, when social media was in a fairly early stage. And I'm not by any means an expert in social media, but what I do is I put together those initial thoughts around what are we trying to get out of social media? Because if you don't have that, then your social media is going to go a little bit wayward. Your content will go a little bit wayward. And really, the question you need to ask before you do anything is, what am I going to do and why am I doing it? And what am I trying to achieve from it? And if you haven't got those questions, you're going to be a little bit stuck, and your social media content will start to just go a little bit all over the place.
Because it's true, isn't it? A lot of businesses just go, yes, we need to do social media. And we need to be on Instagram, and we need to be on Twitter, and we need to be on LinkedIn, and we need to be on Facebook, and then launch and all these platforms, but not really understanding how they work, but 2, not really understanding what they want to get out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think my expertise lies in what are you trying to get out of it. If I'm honest, I'm not very good at running the day-to-day social media. That's not my forte at all. But what I do like to think about is how you take a step back and say, well, which channels am I going to use? Because you don't need to use every channel. Some channels work better for different businesses and different brands. And also, what are you going to say? So one of the things I'm working on at the moment, and I'm just doing some free tutorials actually on my One Objective website, there's my little plug, on how to build your brand. Because for a lot of smaller businesses in particular, brand is a logo, and brand is it needs to be so much more than a logo. You need to define what your personality is. You need to define what your brand values are. You need to define how you want to make your customers feel. And for me, one of the best ways of brand communication is social media. And I know a lot of people use it in a very tactical sense to try and sell. But for the businesses I've worked in the past, it's about building your brand and building brand awareness. And that eventually leads to sales if you do it correctly. But you need to be able to communicate your brand effectively. So brand personality, for example, there needs to be certain things within the way you talk on social media that needs to be consistent. And I talk about brand personality like people's personality. If you meet someone, you go on a date. It's a long time since I've been on a date, but you're kind of assessing their personality and they're assessing your personality. And for me, you need to stick to your own personality, because if you try and be someone you're not, people are going to see through you. And that happens very much with branding, and particularly on social media. So if you're not sticking to this brand personality that you've defined, then people will begin to see through you and think, well, they're not genuine.
Yeah.
And it's that genuineness that you need to get across on your social media feed.
I think that's so important, isn't it? And I think people, I tend to find, like you said earlier, about sell. People use social media to sell. And actually, that's not the right platform. Yes, you get sales eventually, but it's totally about building your brand. Your website should be about selling your products as well as your bit of your brand development, because if people are visiting your website, they're ready to buy, they've heard about you, they're interested in potentially investing in what you do. If people Google, then your website pops up. But on your social media, the biggest switch off, particularly on the likes of Facebook, Instagram, is people just getting sold to constantly. This is my product, this is what it is, this is how much it is, I've got 50% off. And it's
exactly. And I think people don't see necessarily, let's say, Facebook posts on their feed, because there's only a very small percentage of your posts get onto people's feeds. But if you go into their page and begin to look at their posts, if those posts aren't consistent, or they're consistently just trying to flog you things, people's experience on that their social media page aren't a good one, and they'll move away. And you need to, I've been doing this with a few people recently. I've been doing this SWOT analysis and helping them in light of all this coronavirus and the shutdown, and how they're going to come out of it. And I've done it with a few smaller businesses. And the key thing they're needing to focus on is their brand, because they're just throwing out inconsistent messages on Facebook. And sometimes that's lack of planning, and they just think, what am I going to put on today? And they put a picture of the one that really drives me mad is a picture of alcohol, and say, oh, it's sunny outside, let's all have a drink. And you think, well, that's really let down your brand if your brand isn't really anything to do with drinking. But people are thinking, oh, I'm sitting out in the garden, I'm going to take a picture of me having a whatever I'm having, Aperol Spritz, I'll put it on the website, and it just doesn't reflect your brand. And you let yourself down with those type of things. So
does it depend what type of business you're in, though? Because I've done that for my brand, because in my business it is just me. I am it's just me as a consultant. Now, if I had a larger business, then obviously you don't want loads of your staff putting on the Facebook page that they're in the garden having a drink. So
I think the thing is, because your branding, when I look at your Facebook, and your branding is really consistent. So if putting a drink on there at 5 o'clock fits in with your brand personality and what you're trying to put across, then that's fine, because that's consistent with all your other messaging. It's when you maybe have something else that it doesn't fit in. But when you go into someone's feed and you can begin to go through their feed and you think, well, this is a bit inconsistent. So every message that you put on you should run it past your brand personality, and you should run it past your brand values. And the really important one is, how do your customers feel? How do you want your customers to feel in any interaction with you, whether it's looking at your social media, looking at your website, speaking to you on the phone? How do you want them to feel inside? And you need to check every single post and say, is this going to make my customer feel the way I want them to? Mm-hmm. And that's where there's inconsistency. So my role in all this is, I try and work with clients. I work with them on a part-time basis, and I will help them put together what that social media strategy is. Because I'm sure, Bex, people may come to you and say, we want social media, just do social media, just do it. Whereas in fact, the client should be coming to you with, we want to put a social media campaign together. This is our brand. These are our objectives. This is what we're trying to get out of social media. Can you come back and first of all, recommend the best channels for us to go on, recommend a content strategy, all those things. So I don't write the content. I'm not writing content. You're just making sure that there's a solid business plan behind it, and a solid branding plan, and a solid business plan. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're wasting your time a little bit.
And I think really important as well is the targets as well. Setting yourself targets,
yes.
And I don't just mean how many followers, because that's a terrible target, but I mean how much reach, how many business inquiries, how many really sort of tangible business objectives in there. Not, I want to increase my followers by 50%, because anyone can do that, but if it's the wrong followers,
it's the wrong thing. It's the quality of the people. You could have millions of people following you, but if they're not going to buy your product eventually, or they're not interested in your product, and they've followed you for the wrong reason, it's not worth having them. Yeah. So one of the other things that I do is I create these business plans that are based around setting goals and measuring goals. And these could be 2-year plans. And these plans sit on a single piece of paper. And from a marketing perspective, they'll look at what your digital strategy is, what your social media strategy is, your PR strategy, link that directly or indirectly to sales and profitability, look at your costs. And this plan sits on a single piece of paper. And then from that, you then run your business. And that's what I've been doing. I learned this technique about 15 years ago now. I was very lucky to be in a company that was in terrible financial situations, and they brought in all these very clever consultants, and I was asked to sit in the room with them, and I was like the junior in the room, and my boss at the time said to me, make sure you listen to everything they say and learn from it, because in years to come that will benefit you. And that's kind of what I build my business around now. So my business is called One Objective, and the idea of it is that I will put together a plan for you that's built around a single achievable objective that will take your business forward. And it's very strategic, but actually it's really quite simple, and it gets away from just your day-to-day churn of marketing, but actually thinking about, well, where do I really want to be? Because every business needs to have that, and every person within the business needs to know what that single one objective is. So yeah, that will be my message today. First of all, make sure you've got a solid business plan sitting behind your social content strategy. So, and also to make sure that it fits in with your website and it fits in with your PR, because sometimes you see certain businesses and they're running things in all these different directions. So your business plan will ensure that you're all moving in the same direction, all your different channels. And then the other thing is make sure that your social media content is adhering to your brand, because that's where people will see through you. And just think about going on a date and trying to be someone you're not, and straight away you don't feel comfortable with yourself, and the other person doesn't feel comfortable with you either. So
yeah, and I think it's so important, isn't it? Because these days social media is the first point of contact for a lot of people.
Yes.
The first time they see your brand.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's got to be spot on. It's got to be good, and it's got to follow through and take them on this lovely journey towards your website, towards your shopping cart, towards your business premises, towards picking up that phone and giving you a ring. So people that just sort of put content out there a bit ad hoc are really letting the side of the business down, really. It's the whole brand development. That customer journey can be cut so short, because if you don't get it right from the first instance, that first touch point, people buy from people they trust.
It's the first thing you do. You are absolutely right. And I meet people in networking meetings now, and even as you're walking away from the networking meeting on your way to the car, you're already looking on your phone to see what their LinkedIn profile's like, or their Facebook profile, to see, well, does it really match up with what the person I've just spoken to for the last 15 minutes? And if it doesn't, you think, ooh. So that's what it's about. It's about defining who you are. It's the first thing people look at. Yeah.
So what would you say then? How, if you're looking at your new business and you think, right, is my brand who I think it is? You know, what sort of checkpoints do you have for people when you've got a brand? So my brand is kind of, I've probably not spent a huge amount of time looking at my brand and developing it. My brand is just, you know, this is me, this is who I am, these are the skills I have, and this is how I want to help you guys out there with social media and teach you guys how to do it. Mine's a little bit simpler because it's just me in the business. So, and I think that's a lot easier. Whereas when you've got a larger business, you've got to get the buy-in from all your employees into that sort of brand as well. So what are the sort of 3 tips when you're looking, if businesses, you know, a lot of people who are watching today, kind of smaller businesses who just work for themselves or employ a couple of people, what would be your sort of little checklist?
I think from a brand perspective, you'll know your own brand. You already have a brand, Bex. You already have a brand, but you might just not have written it down. And it's writing it down, because as soon as you write it down, it's defined then, and you're sticking to it, and you're not moving around the edges of it. And then you can begin to define it a lot better and define it in the minds of your customers as well. So I would write it down. Again, on my website at the moment, I'm doing these free tutorials, and I'm building a brand triangle. So I've already put together a mission statement. So you write your own mission statement. You then define how you want your customers to feel, define your personality, define your values, and a vision statement. And it's easy. And everyone should have one. Even if you're a one-man band like me, you should have one, because it'll make your life so much easier in the way you communicate with others.
Okay. what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link, actually. I'm just going to find that. Tutorial 8, brand personality. Is that the one?
That's the one. And I'm about to upload another one this afternoon on brand values. Okay. So that should be there hopefully by this evening. So I'm just working my way through them bit by bit. And they're very informal. They're very simple. And it just gives you something to think about.
Okay, no, that's really great. Well, thank you for that. If anyone's got any questions, please do put them in the chat before we sign off, particularly around brand. I think that's really interesting because I kind of know my brand. I think I know my brand. It's my brand is very much when the look and feel. I make sure that all my logos, I know it's not the whole thing about your brand, but my logos, my imagery follows through right on every social media platform, follows through, so that hopefully if anyone sees the branding, they'll think, oh, that's Bex. A lot of my branding is my face because it's just me in the business. This is my daughter did this one actually. It's a little sheep because a lot of my branding originally when I developed it was around the sort of the hills and the tree because a lot of my brand is about using sort of that metaphor. Is it metaphor the right word? But a tree, basically you've got to get the foundations right. You've got to nourish the roots in order to bloom and to grow. And that's very sort of much about.
Well, that's where yours is a really good physical representation because you were talking then about how it looks. And my question then would have been, but what's it about? But now you've given that as well, so you can see that it's a physical representation. And when people are doing this brand triangle, it's not necessarily about what the brand looks like and what the logo looks like. It's about what's behind that logo. So mine, for example, is my values are innovation, inspiration, and entrepreneurial mindset. And they're the three things that I try and get across to the people I'm talking to. And then I have a very specific personality as well, which is charismatic, passionate, and honest. And they're the three things that I want to try and get across in every conversation that I have. And if you have them in your mind and you're focused on them and you're using them in the words that you're using, particularly on social media, if you're continuing to use the words innovative, inspirational, entrepreneurial, that's how people will begin to perceive you. It's very subtle, almost subconscious, but in the end, it'll go through because that's how people will see you and associate you.
And Esther's got a question. Where does your mission statement sit when it comes to branding? Which is a good question.
Your mission statement sits underneath your branding. Before you get into your branding, your mission statement for me, and there's so many different ideas on what mission and vision do, but your mission statement is really about what you do now. It's about who you are and what you do. And once you've defined what you do and it's clear what you do for yourself, for your employees, and for your customers, then you can begin to build your brand on the top of that. So this brand triangle I've been talking about, that's your base level, is your mission statement. And then you build up. And once you've built up all these other values and personalities, you can then build your vision statement. And your vision statement is more about what you're looking to do in the future and what you aspire to be. But your mission statement is what you do now.
Yeah. And I just loved what you said earlier about you just keep it to one page, because I think that is one of the biggest mistakes. Having worked in the public sector for a number of years, and our business plan was literally pages and pages long. Nobody, certainly
no one reads it.
We're never going to read it. And I think that's so important. You've got to keep it simple. Like you say, it can be a couple of lines on a sheet of A4 with a few bullet points. And I really like that. So, yeah. And
in the previous businesses I've worked in where I've managed larger teams, every single person has that business plan just behind the screen, so they can see it all the time, because it has everything that business should be doing. And if you're doing things that aren't on that business plan, then you shouldn't be doing them, really, because you haven't planned for them.
Yeah. No, that's great. Oh, well, thank you. If anyone's got any questions, just give us a shout. And again, I'll just put Chris's link up there if you would like to have a look a bit more detail in his brand.
And that's just one of the tutorials. There's another 7 before that, and they look at analyzing your business, putting together SWOT analysis for your business. So during the lockdown, I thought to myself, I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I thought, what can I do here that will help? So I've put together these free tutorials that you can do as a team. They're really good to work on if you've got Zoom calls amongst people who you're working with, to try and define analyze your business, understand your business. And at the moment, I'm just talking about branding. So there's loads of things to do.
Yeah.
Competing with Joe Wicks. I think he's getting more readers than you, though.
Yeah. Are you doing, you've been doing your cycling, haven't you? So as well.
Yeah. I'm out on my bike a lot at the moment. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Keeping fit in the sunshine. Okay. No, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for that, Chris.
No,
as I say, here's a list. So next week, I'm coming up with a plan. I say this every week, so this is part of my brand, Chris. I tell all my viewers that I'm coming up with a plan with all my social media and live streaming, and I do it for a couple of weeks, and then it falls down the wayside. So next week we'll be back at 12:30. It will just be me. I will be looking at a subject that I have yet to decide what to talk about, but it would be really useful. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. My next workshops that's coming up actually starts tomorrow. So that's on Pinterest. I'm going to just bring in the link up, actually. I'll share that with you guys in a minute. But Pinterest, if you sell online for e-commerce, I cannot stress how fantastic these workshops are. So basically, my workshops used to be, we used to do a full morning in Warrington, and I'd teach you on LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever. Now, what I'm doing is I'm actually doing them an hour a day over 4 days online. And it's working phenomenally well because people don't have to travel. But with that hour, I'm taking you through step by step, not only how to set up Pinterest, but actually, if you've already got a Pinterest account, it's more about how do we develop it so that it's ranking higher in the searches, so that people are finding it, so you're putting the right pins in there, so that you've organized it into boards. So like Chris was saying, you're thinking about your audience and what they want, not what you want to sell. And I used to use Pinterest at Nomad Games. Pinterest is traditionally 80% of users on Pinterest are generally female. However, I used it for Nomad Games, and I'm just copying the link. That's why I'm not. So I used it for Nomad Games, and majority of our target audience were men, 35 in America that loved wargaming. And one of the directors went, "Yeah, Bex, let's get on Pinterest." And I was like, "Pinterest, really?" And we were like, "Yes, we've got to use Pinterest." I was like, "It's mainly female, weddings and lifestyle products and things like that." So, but we'll give it a go. So I went on Pinterest, and because there's about 35 million people who actively use Pinterest, even though there was about 20% of men and an even tinier percentage of people that were going to go on it for wargaming, the results we got were phenomenal because I had such a lovely niche market. And basically, I built up the boards over about 3 months, built it up on Pinterest with all these amazing boards about dragons and witches and things like that. Nothing to do necessarily with our game. And then I had boards about our game, and we'd do screenshots and things like that. Some really fantastic images. And by the end of the 12 months, we were getting 500,000 hits every month onto our site, and it became onto the Pinterest page, and it became one of the biggest referrers to our website with regards to our social media, yet it had the smallest following. So for me, I love Pinterest. It's not used quite as much in the UK as it is in America, but if you do sell products online, it is a phenomenal platform.
Well, that's a great example of having a plan and knowing your audience and finding your audience and giving them the perfect information. Everything was working to your brand. So it's a great way of working. Even if it is relatively small, the people who are on Pinterest are very interested. They're not just kind of passing by and passing through. They are nigh on obsessed with whatever it is they're looking at. And that's why they're a great audience, if you can find them.
That's it. And the beauty about Pinterest is people buy. People go on there and go, "Oh, I want that. I want to buy it." And every single pin has a link to your website or to your individual product in your shopping cart. So it is phenomenal. Whereas Instagram, you can't put links in if you're only a small brand. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, you get massively penalized if you put links in, whereas Pinterest actively encourages you to put links in. So I love it. I get excited about it. And we're going to be getting excited about Pinterest this week. in our workshop. So we do still have some places left. So there's the link should anyone be interested. Well, thank you everybody for watching today. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on live.
No, thank you. It's been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this. This is a great way. You don't even have to leave the house.
I know, it's great, isn't it? Who needs online stuff? So who needs in person, should I say? Online is definitely the future, particularly when we're all stuck at home anyway. So thank you, Chris. That was really good. Again, we'll write that up today, a bit of a blog, and we'll put that on the website as well as a bit of a summary. And for those of you who are not watching this live, please do add your comments, because we will answer them after the live stream as well. So please do add your comments at the end. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do like and subscribe to my channel for lots of regular tips and tutorials on social media. And we will see you again next week at 12:30. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.